Well, folks, Mike Naso here from Internet Partnership Radio. IPR365.com will be very busy over the coming days and weeks as hurricane season 2011 continues to ramp up. And again, we are the third earliest now for our ninth named storm behind 1936 and 2005. And obviously, in 1936, we didn't have satellites and recon like we do today, so Lord knows how many systems we missed. And in 2005, we had 28 storms, went into the Greek alphabet. And for those of you who have been watching these updates, in fact, our IPR YouTube page will be updated in the coming days and weeks, especially considering how we might be busy here, maybe later rather than earlier, with the archives of these videos from 2005. And remember, we had Irene, which looked to be an East Coast threat and then ended up becoming a Category 2 hurricane and moving out. And Katrina was the big August storm. Well, we do have Irene out there today, and if we keep up this pace, we could well get pretty darn far down the alphabet, I think. I think we could definitely see our PRS name storm again, like we did last year, if this keeps up. As we put things into motion, you can see Harvey, former 93L, took that dramatically long track straight off Africa into the Caribbean, continued very, very close and went in towards Honduras and Belize, even closer than these lines I'm drawing. It was extremely close to the coastline, still made it to 60, but could not become a hurricane, ran out of room, but it would have. There was an eye developing, and as it moved into Belize, it was a moderate to strong tropical storm. You can see still some good impacts with the rainfall there, but thankfully it's moving quickly enough to where we're not going to have to worry about the flooding. This, however, is Irene, and this is the most significant threat thus far of the 2011 Atlantic hurricane season. I will tell you why. I will try and explain in some detail exactly what the model guidance is hinting at and what what are the variables going in towards what Irene could do in the future days. And I wish I had a crystal ball to know exactly 10 days from now what Irene did, if it went into history in the weather books as a minimal tropical storm that never did anything, or if it was a destructive major hurricane, because this system is a complete question mark right now more than ever. Let's start with Harvey, not to try and downplay Irene at all, but just to make sure we don't overstate that Harvey is inland as a weakening tropical storm. Still a tropical storm, though, as of 11 p.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. Central. It was at 17.4 north, 90.2 west. Winds were 40, gusting to 50. It's moving straight west at 13, which is good news. It won't sit and bury itself over the Yucatan and rain like mad. 1,003 millibars. The pressure with Harvey actually a little lower than the pressure with, I almost said Emily. I'm going to have this problem with Irene. And Harvey is expected to continue to weaken. The only chance that it could come back is if some sort of remnant moves on the northern edge of this tiny little cone of uncertainty, and maybe Sunday night, Monday morning, creeps into the Bay of Campeche and starts spinning and tries to become a depression or a storm again. The chances of that are very, very slim at this point. Nonetheless, Harvey did try and become the season's first hurricane, but it looks like Irene will beat it to the punch, because Irene does look like it will become a hurricane. Now, unlike Emily, which was earlier in August, had a lot less favorable environment, Irene is in a much better situation to become a hurricane, and a dangerous hurricane. As of 11 p.m. Eastern, Irene was at 15.3 north, 59.9 west. And the winds were still at 50 miles per hour, so a moderate tropical storm gusting to 65. Is moving west at 21 miles an hour, very quickly west. But there is uncertainty about not only the motion, but where the center is. If the center tries to maybe wrap up a little bit further north than it has, then all bets are off. This whole track could be adjusted a degree to the north, and that changes the whole ball game. I mean, you could end up with a system much further on the northern edge of this cone. On the other hand, if it keeps moving straight west, it could end up on the southern edge of this cone and also be a lot different situation. I'll tell you what that means. 1,006 millibars, as I mentioned, that is higher actually than Harvey right now. So it's not exactly a well-organized tropical storm, but it's trying. The forecast from the Hurricane Center as of 11 p.m. has it moving through the Leeward Islands later tonight throughout the early morning, and then strengthening. And by Monday morning becoming the season's first hurricane south of the Mona Passage here. And then as it strikes Hispaniola, strengthening 85 miles an hour at least at landfall, and then weakening, and then trying to re-intensify between Haiti and eastern Cuba, then weakening some more, and then strengthening almost to a hurricane again, approaching the middle Florida Keys by Thursday night. Now here's the situation. This is all speculative at this time because land will weaken and change the whole circumstance of the circulation. If Irene takes this track, this is probably something that's likely, something more like Tropical Storm Ernesto 5 years ago that became a hurricane, hit Haiti, and then couldn't do anything more than a moderate tropical storm and hit Florida and barreled up the East Coast, although a turn like that seems less likely with Irene. But remember in 2008 we also had Faye, which took a track further west but remained over land enough to not become a hurricane but still caused problems. But the next storm after that was Gustav, which also became a hurricane, hit Haiti, weakened dramatically, then came right back into almost a Category 5 hurricane by western Cuba. So when you're dealing with interaction with land that can weaken a system so dramatically, you have to realize, as the Hurricane Center said, if Irene takes the northern edge of this cone, it can be a significant major hurricane and head directly over open waters here towards land masses further west. If Irene takes the southern edge of this cone, it could also be a significant major hurricane. And so right now, if you don't want it to get strong, you're rooting for the middle. But even then, it's uncertain what it's going to do. Plus, we have to deal with the impacts towards the greater Antilles. This is a mess, I'm going to tell you right now. Here's the model guidance as the new 0Z runs come out. We'll see if this adjusts any. Right now, it appears the Hurricane Center is pretty good with a consensus of right over most of the land masses here, from the Leeward Islands to Hispaniola to Cuba to Florida. However, it could be like the UK Met shows, much further west, and if that is the case, we have a very intense hurricane entering the Gulf of Mexico, and that would be very, very problematic indeed. Now, I did want to show you Irene on the latest IR picture, and you can see it is bubbling pretty good there. It looks like the center is trying to get a little bit better organized. There is some dry air, but it's trying to mix it out. It is definitely organizing, at least it seems tilted more so in the correct direction than Emily did. Emily had problems, and you can see the radar out of Martinique now clearly showing rainfall coming into the islands and organization. You do see some spinning there, nothing extremely well organized, but definitely some rainfall coming into the islands. And keep in mind, some of these winds sustained 50 miles an hour. If you get in those winds, it's going to be pretty nasty. So we'll see if those go over the northern islands and what kind of adjustment track may need if the center tries to relocate. Right now, don't bet on it. The HWRF was showing before this was named at 18Z this system becoming a hurricane as it moved through the islands in about 18 hours. That seems a little bit unrealistic. However, as you can see, it strengthens the system into a Category 4, makes landfall on Hispaniola, moves over Haiti, exits, hits eastern Cuba as a Category 4, then leaves Cuba and ends up heading directly towards southeast Florida as a Category 5 hurricane. Now this seems very, very suspect given how much land it crossed and given how large the wind field is. Systems with this large wind field that have gone over land don't tend to intensify as quickly as this model shows. Nonetheless, if it did verify, we would be dealing with a very, very sticky situation. I know people in Florida would not want to wake up by Thursday and see this on the radar heading directly towards them. That would be a very, very bad situation. Now the GFDL, on the other hand, has shown the system a little bit more realistically, not quite becoming a hurricane right away, waiting a little longer, but moving south of Hispaniola. And that's the key. If this system does organize into a hurricane and misses Hispaniola to the south, Ivan, Dean, Dennis, Gustav, what did they do? Look at that, right over Jamaica, heading up towards western Cuba. Look at this. Makes it a Category 5 hurricane. Not just a Category 5, a 170 to 180 mile an hour Category 5, 921 millibar pressure, which given that it's at 1,006 now, 921 would be pretty low considering the background pressures for a wind speed that hurricane. Now, the chances of this happening, of course, you got to take it with a grain of salt, but just the fact that the models are showing this is not out of the realm of possibility if the system stays over water. It's late August. I mean, this thing, you know, what are we talking here? It's going to be a very interesting scenario because look at these upper level winds. This is an anticyclone, high pressure spinning clockwise around the system. You see 40 knots up here. You think, oh, it's wind shear. Yeah, wind shear ventilating around Irene. This is going to be the problem. If Irene keeps this, as it may well do, throughout the period and moves north of the cone or south, or even just kind of scrapes and bumps up. Remember Dennis went over Cabo Cruz and went down from 135 to 130 and then back up to 150. That type of thing is very, very touchy when you're dealing with land masses. But if it has an upper level pattern like this throughout its lifetime, if it gets in the Gulf or the Florida Straits or the Bahamas or the Western Caribbean, we could be in big trouble for a major hurricane if that does indeed occur. You can see again the tendency is down. Look at the Gulf of Mexico. If Harvey had been taking a track like that, boy, would we be in trouble in northern Mexico and Texas. Let me tell you, with the way Harvey was bombing that close to Honduras, imagine over open water in August in the Gulf with wind shear like that. So let's be thankful Harvey didn't move further north and cause problems. But here's Irene, and you can see the wind pattern around it, low wind shear over the top of it. It's all a matter of getting organized, and that's what we're going to have to watch out for. And you can see in the final analysis, there is Irene trying to get better organized. And clearly, this evening, as night has fallen on the Caribbean Sea, none of us are sleeping. And I don't blame you, because something this interesting warrants our attention. So we'll wait and see what Irene does. Right now, if you live in Puerto Rico, you're under the warning. South coast of Hispaniola, you got the watch. And don't be surprised in the coming days if the Turks, Caicos, Bahamas, and areas of Cuba or Jamaica get under some watches and warnings as this thing ends up making its way towards the west, and eventually the west-northwest. We'll see exactly where the track of Irene goes. Stay tuned to IPR365.com tomorrow night at 8-9 p.m. We will have Center of Circulation with Charlie Wilson as we continue to monitor Irene here at IPR. Stay tuned.